You're listening to the JD Rucker Show. Let's begin. Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the JD Rucker Show. I'm your host, JD Rucker, and what a weekend. You know, it seems like for the last 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9 Mondays, every weekend is quite a weekend. This weekend I was actually very busy with the show, so busy that I came very close to putting out my first weekend show in a long time, full-blown weekend show, instead of just the little segments that I do, because that's what I've been doing a lot lately. I've been putting out segments that are intended as basically standalones, 10, 15, 20-minute segments that can be short little, not short, but relative, medium-sized, podcast-style stuff. Putting those out there and seeing what happens, and a couple of them actually went, I wouldn't say viral for me, we'll say, on my X account. Generally speaking, there was a time when I would be able to easily get hundreds, even thousands of retweets back when it was Twitter and stuff like that, and I basically abandoned Twitter for like 8 months, and it's never been the same. Algorithmic death penalty. I've seen signs. I mean, I've had signs of improved quote-unquote engagement there, but it just takes so much time and effort. And I understand there's a lot of people out there that put in the time and the effort, that use X as their primary source for audience reach, putting their shows on there. Maybe someday I can do it. But right now, I prefer to rely on Rumble, for example, or BitChute, Getter, even YouTube. And not to take away from X, I'm all over X as well. It's just that, on X, I might get a dozen reposts, I guess they're called now, and maybe 1,000, 2,000 views. It's just like, it's a smaller piece of the overall puzzle. With that said, I did have a couple that did very well over there, so I'm going to be replaying them today. A couple of the segments are going to be from the weekend, but they're still relevant. Both of them actually have to do with the Friday debacle, the meeting. Well, it was supposed to just be a mineral deal signing turned into a joke. So, I'm sorry, and that's Thursday, not Friday. But a couple of things. One in particular, and this should interest, I think, a lot of people, is the fact that I'm at about 70% sure that at the very least Kaitlan Collins, if not CNN in general, coordinated with Vladimir Zelensky during the press conference from hell that he did with President Trump and JD Vance. I think that they coordinated. There's not a ton of evidence, but it's enough evidence that makes me believe that it's possible that there was coordination, between CNN, Kaitlan Collins, and Vladimir Zelensky. When I put it out there, though, out on various networks, I started getting in more bits of evidence. Somebody had said that afterwards, Zelensky kind of sought out Kaitlan Collins and kind of gave her a quick thumbs up and a nod later on as she's interviewing like Marco Rubio and stuff. It's clear that she has Ukrainian talking points embedded. Okay, she knows exactly what Vladimir Zelensky and the supporters of Ukraine wanted her to ask. She tried to ask them. Marco Rubio, again, every week he turns into a bigger and better champ in my eyes, somebody that I've been extraordinarily critical of, ever since the Tea Party betrayal, We put him in as a great Tea Party candidate. He had all this great future ahead of him, and then he got John McCain and joined the Gang of Eight, and next thing we know, he was, barely above middle of the pack as a senator for years. Once he got put into the into the State Department, Secretary of State, I think he's been an excellent choice. So he did very well handling her. Pam Bondi, on the other hand, Pam Bondi has not been an excellent choice, and I've been critical of her pretty much throughout. The only reason I really gave her a chance, I was super hopeful about former Congressman Matt Gaetz becoming the next Attorney General, and when that fell off, and they put in Pam Bondi, I was like, I gave her a chance because she was a warrior and really fought the stolen 2020 election. Okay, she flew around. She didn't just stay in Florida. She went up to Pennsylvania. She filed lawsuits. She did her thing. She was really a true ally and friend to President Donald Trump. The thing I never liked about her is that I haven't considered her to be very bright. I know she's probably brilliant, okay? But there's a difference between book smart and instincts. There's a difference between book smarts and street smarts. And I think that she, in many ways, she lacks the street smarts to be a fully effective attorney general. And I think that we've seen that on display, just the sheer fact, if she's telling the truth that after watching the videos, knowing that the FBI took multiple boxes full of videotapes and documents and everything. I mean, they had to make multiple trips just to get everything off of Epstein Island. And if she truly believed that the 200 pages that they gave her, that was it, then shame on her. She had to wait for a whistleblower to tell her, hey, yeah, there's like a lot more, And it seems to be the case because, again, a week before the quote-unquote Epstein list drop, that week before, she's like, yeah, it's sitting on my desk. Okay. So you've had it for at least a week, probably longer than that. You've had it for at least a week, and you didn't come to the conclusion based upon its skinniness, based upon the fact that almost all of that was already released before. And yet, here she is. She's like, yeah, I've had it on my desk for a week. We're going to be releasing it soon. Then the day before, coming out and saying, oh, yeah, it was... it's got some really, we're going to be naming names. It's got some really good information in there. And then the day of, it's like, we had this whistleblower tell us last night that the Southern District in New York has a lot more stuff, and we're trying to get that, and we're going to set a deadline. They have to have it on my desk. I sent a harshly worded letter that says if they don't have it on my desk by 8 a.m. tomorrow, that I am going to send another more harshly worded letter. Then she went on Mark Levin over the weekend and proceeded to say something that, for whatever reason, I think a lot of conservatives were cheering about it. They were like, oh, yeah, here she comes. Pam's coming. She said, she told Mark, and I'm not going to play it. She told Mark that she knows, she has an idea of who's behind the cover-up, who's behind withholding the documents, the full Epstein details, list, evidence, whatever, and that they're going to get fired. And a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people were like, oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, fire their butts. Fire those dirty, filthy scumbags. And I'm like, are you kidding me? These people are withholding evidence from the Attorney General of the United States in defiance of an executive order from the President of the United States to protect not only the integrity of the most prolific known celebrity pedophile that we've seen in this nation pretty much ever, but more importantly, the world leaders, business people, powerful men, and in some cases apparently women, protecting them, and doing this by withholding massive amounts of evidence. That, to me, is not, okay, you shouldn't have done that. We're going to have to let you go, okay? We're just, go get a box, get your desk cleared out, you're out of here, bucko. That's not the response that I want from a Trump Attorney General. I want a, phone call saying, hey, just making sure Make sure you're still there. Yeah, we did finally get the files. Thank you for finally sending them over. Oh, I hear loud noise. Oh, is that the raid that I ordered on you? Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that was me. Yeah, we're yeah, it's totally. I'm going for charges of treason. Yeah, we're gonna try to get you convicted of treason, and you know what that means. But if we can't get treason, then at the very least you will be spending the rest of your natural life in federal prison. Yeah, yeah. Good luck with that. And by the way, also you're fired. See, that's what I would have expected. Instead, I'm demanded that they get me this data, this information, and we're gonna, when we find out who it is, oh boy, they are getting the pink slip. Yeah, not impressed with Pam Bondi, or as Laura Loomer's been. It's funny, sometimes I get words stuck in my mouth, nicknames, where I almost can't say the non-nickname version. Just as an example, I can't say Gretchen Whitmer. It's only Gretchen Whitmer, okay? That's all there is to me. We use that nickname over at thelibertydaily.com, and so she's Gretchen Whitmer. It's embedded in my head. And Laura Loomer is trying to get Pam Blondie embedded in my head. It's almost working. But yeah, she's not a big fan. What else happened? We had the Oscars. I love how you got a lot of people that they brag about. Oh, I didn't watch it. They watched it. I can tell you with all honesty, I didn't watch it, and I wasn't watching it way back when. I've sort of been an entertainment hermit for quite a while. I gave up. I came out to L.A., came out to Southern California with the intention of getting into the movie industry. This was decades ago, but that's when I realized, hey, so wait, you're telling me that there's really no market for conservative or Christian movies? I thought there may, you got plenty of blood and guts and nudity and stupidity. Why not try something different? They're like, yeah, no. This before it was obviously very well known today that Hollywood is woke and all that stuff. But back then, when I first moved out here, it was like, yeah, maybe we need to just shake it up a bit. Hey, no, nobody wanted it shooken up. I used to be into movies, the point I'm getting at. I used to be into watching NFL football, okay, NBA, even, MLB. But I think that the strike from, what was it, 94? That was the last time I ever watched a professional baseball game. I would watch that every day, like 7 days a week. I would watch baseball. I worshipped almost baseball. And after they went on strike, betrayed me, and betrayed all their fans, in my humble opinion, I never went back. I'm telling you that not to brag, but I mean, just so you know, when I hold a grudge, we're almost at 3 decades. Yeah, I kind of, or over 3 decades. I hold a grudge. And same thing with Hollywood right now. I still occasionally watch a little bit every now and then if it's fully vetted out. And I've watched now 1.5 Super Bowls and no actual other games in the last like 7 or 8 years of the NFL. The reason I bring all that up is I do watch the occasional clip. I catch highlights. I'll admit it. I catch NFL highlights sometimes. I catch, I watch certain Hollywood trailers just to see if there's anything there. I will watch scenes from episodes. And yes, when it comes to awards shows like the Oscars last night, I watched a couple of clips from that. Mostly woke, but there's just one clip, okay? One clip that's making its rounds on conservative media. And, I'm not trying to be Mr. Contrarian today, but that's apparently what I'm being, because you got a lot of people say that Kieran Culkin, who went out and he told it was an interesting story about how, when he won his daytime Emmy, he and his wife have 2 kids. When he won his daytime Emmy, he's like, if I win, we got to have a 3rd kid. And she agreed. And he said that night, he's like, we should go for 4. This was over a year ago. After winning his daytime Emmy, he said we should go for 4. And she said, okay, if you want 4, you're going to have to win an Oscar. And she's like, didn't really think he ever could. And then, of course, he won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor last night. And he retold the story. He's like, I haven't brought it up, but we shook on it. Do you remember? He's pointing out it was an adorable and wholesome moment. Okay, as wholesome as it gets, without taking note that he dropped the F-bomb twice within the first 5 seconds of accepting his award. That part aside, he relayed that story, and it's like, okay, yeah, fodder, blah blah blah. It's great, At least he didn't go full blown idiot. Well, here's the thing. I see so many talking heads on conservative media, especially last night. It's kind of died down today, I think, because I think there was probably a lot of people that were lambasting them. But a whole bunch of people, influencers in conservative media, were like, this is the most pro-family speech delivered in years at the Oscars. This is, and I'm just like, holy cow, are you kidding me? It's like they crave anything. They can say, look, we're winning, oh my gosh. And they latch onto the worst people. I'm not saying that Kieran Culkin is like is that his name? I don't even know how to pronounce his name. That he's like, some really awful Hollywood elite, but he is Hollywood. He's not like out there promoting, taking shots at wokeism or promoting Jesus Christ or supporting Donald Trump. He just made a quick comment about how, it's time to go get going on the third and fourth kid. It was a slice of life moment. It was a funny story. He wasn't being, oh my gosh, super pro family. He just told a funny story, and that's it. And so many conservative influencers just latched onto it, and they're like, oh my gosh, I saw some that I was like, this is the shift that I guarantee you if Kamala Harris had won, there's no way that he would have been allowed to say that. No, he totally would have. Okay. Because it wasn't that consequential. Okay. Having lots of kids does not necessarily make you like super pro family. Alec Baldwin has like 9 kids. Are you gonna say, oh my gosh, Alec Baldwin is one of the most pro-family guys in the world because he's got all those kids, Angelina Jolie has like 6, and she's like out there, pushing for as many abortions as possible. And hey, let's inject everybody in Africa with these Bill Gates things. And who is his name? Rapper DMX. DMX has like literally like 17 kids. Okay, DMX has 17 kids, probably with like 19 mothers. Go make that math work. What I'm trying to get at is that we cannot start latching onto everything, and it happens all the time. Okay, Kanye West comes out, he says, yeah, I like Donald Trump, and all of a sudden, all these conservatives were all like, Kanye's my boy, Kanye 2028. It was like, oh my gosh, really? Seriously? Now it's like, oh, distancing. Look, I'm not trying to, because everybody makes mistakes, okay? Everybody makes mistakes. We tend to, I mentioned earlier, look, I was all on board the Marco Rubio bandwagon until he met John McCain, okay? When he was a Florida state legislator, I was like, man, this guy's rock solid. This guy's the future of the party. When we pushed him and helped to get him elected at a time when Florida wasn't exactly the most red state like it is today, there was a Tea Party push proving, oh my gosh, see, we can get constitutional conservatives, limited government folks into office. We don't have to go for rhinos. We can, and then as it turned out, he was, at least in many ways, not 100%. Like I said, he was about middle of the pack, mediocre among senators, but like, there were definitely worse senators. But he turned out to be nothing really great as a senator. I made that mistake, but I'm glad that I did, because now, again, I think he's doing a very good job as Secretary of State. It's still early, but we'll see. Point being, gosh, rambling, sorry. Point being is that let's not elevate Kieran Culkin up on any pedestal at all. Does he want more kids with his wife? Yeah. Has he demonstrated some stability that's very lacking in Hollywood by being with the same woman for 12 years? Absolutely. And already having 2 kids with her? Sure. But if you look at his history, This is a guy, he grew up, it was like a family of 8, okay? His dad was basically not there. His mom raised him in a very small place, but he did have lots of brothers and sisters. And generally speaking, when you got lots of brothers and sisters, you tend to have lots of kids. It's just more likely. Look at, I'm Alec Baldwin, for example. Okay? So just let's stop elevating everybody. He wasn't putting out a pro-family message. Not at all. He just didn't put out an anti family message, and while he was telling a funny story about him and his wife. That's it. It's not worth cheering about. It's worth, it's like saying, a kid, right? You're a kid in school and you get bullied every day, and you're like, hey, I didn't get bullied in class today. My life is changing. No, you just didn't get bullied in class today. The same thing with, oh, great. Here's one Hollywood guy accepting an award that didn't come out there and just rip on Donald Trump or rip on family or support Ukraine or whatever. He actually came out there and just said what he said. Let's not celebrate that, okay? Shall we? Okay. Rant over. We do have a big show today, like I said. And it starts with this. There's a gold rush going on right now, not just by central banks, not just by entire countries, not just by those trying to refill Fort Knox before Elon Musk and President Trump get there. No, there's a gold rush happening amongst individual Americans. It's a gold and silver rush, and it's specifically attracting people of retirement, retirement age. People are starting to realize that maybe they don't need their IRAs or 401ks or whatever stuck in the stock market. Maybe they should be looking at physical precious metals like gold and silver. Now, I am not a financial advisor, so I'm not going to give you advice. I'm just going to tell you who to talk to if you've already made up your mind and you think maybe I should consider it. Go to jdrgold.com, jdrgold.com, or call 800-200-4653. That's 800-200-GOLD. And check out what the folks over at Genesis Gold Group can do for you. They are a faith-driven precious metals company. They don't do the scams, the cheats, the tactics, such as offering free or bonus silver. It's never free, and it's not really a bonus. You're paying for it. They just tack it onto the price and they say, "Oh, look, here's free, here's bonus." No. It's they probably have a good role to play in government, at least the old government. I would imagine that DOGE and Elon Musk would sniff out their scams. But if you want to deal with a direct and honest company to do a tax-free rollover or transfer of your IRA, go to jdrgold.com, jdrgold.com. You'll receive a free definitive wealth protection kit, plus you will be contacted by my good friends at Genesis Gold Group. Democrats would embrace DOGE if they weren't so terrified of being busted by it. And we should go ahead and just call it the uniparty swamp. It's not just the Democrats. There are plenty of Republicans who are also terrified of DOGE. They just don't have the luxury of being able to speak out against it, because then it would give away their stance. And I say that, but there are actually some Republicans who are coming around and saying, "Oh, Elon's cutting too much. Elon's going too far." They're being a little bit more quiet about it because they realize that the vast majority of Republicans are in favor of these massive cuts. But here's the thing. A whole bunch of Democrats are in favor of it as well, especially when you don't frame it from the perspective. If you don't mention Elon Musk and you don't mention Donald Trump, and you just ask them the flat-out questions, do you think that our government is run inefficiently? Do you think that there should be major cuts in what the government does? Vast majority of them would say yes. It's only when you start throwing in, President Trump is, and then you start, and also Elon Musk, and it's, that's when Democrat voters really start to cringe. They fall back to their default setting of Orange Man bad and rich billionaire space dude bad, whatever. Alex Karp, speaking of brilliant dudes, Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir, is one of the, I would say he's one of my favorite transitioning Democrats. There's a lot of them, obviously. A lot of them out there who have been Democrats perhaps even their entire lives, who are now starting to at least become independent, if not full-blown Republican. And we can, of course, thank President Trump for a good chunk of that. But we can also thank the Democrats because they have, over the last 4.5 years, have exposed themselves, thoroughly exposed themselves for their true allegiance. And that allegiance, of course, is not to the United States of America, to the Constitution, or to the American people. But one would think that, based upon the popularity of DOGE, because we're looking at some polls say like 73%, and those are the low-end polls. Other polls are showing much higher appreciation and acceptance and just Americans cheering for these cuts. So you'd think that they would see the writing on the wall, and you'd think that they would come around, perhaps, and maybe start saying, hey, you know what? We want to be part of the conversation. But they're not, and Alex Karp was sort of confused by this. Watch.
90% of the country's like, get rid of that fraud, waste, and abuse. And I just view this as yet another example of the progressive left boxing themselves into a suicide dance.
Standard operating procedure, and really for both parties, is to oppose whatever the other party's doing, especially if you don't have any power, such as the Democrats right now, with the Republicans having majorities in the House, the Senate, and control of the White House. It feels like they have to just lash out. That's what they generally do, just as, to be fair, Republicans do the same thing. At the beginning of every Democrat term, first 2 years of Obama, they were lashing out. First 2 years of Biden, they were lashing out because they didn't have any power, just as the Democrats have no legislative or executive power as of right now. With that said, this is a different situation. Because of the immense popularity of DOGE, it would behoove Democrats to go to Elon Musk and say, hey, we want to be part of this. You know, we don't agree with your boss, and we don't agree with all of the things that you're doing, but we know that you can do good, so we want to talk. We want to be part of this. And you know what he would do? He would say, come on in. Let's talk, explain to me why we shouldn't cut this or why we should cut that. And he would listen. But they don't want to do that. They don't want to talk to him at all. Here's Alex Karp again explaining it.
What the progressive left should be doing is saying, okay, Elon, you're clearly the most qualified person in the world to do something like this. We want to dialogue with you about how you're doing and what are you doing. I don't believe that's actually what happened.
It's definitely not what has happened. I hope it does. Look, I am not a fan of the Democrat Party, but I think that they could actually, if they tried, they could actually contribute to this. Now, I could always make a joke about how they know where more of the bodies are buried, and that would help Elon Musk to do his job better. But I won't make that joke. That would be wrong. But what's not wrong is the fact that we don't trust them. And it's not just the Democrats. We don't trust Washington, D.C. And it's not just the politicians that we don't trust. We don't trust the bureaucrats. And it's not even just the bureaucrats that we don't trust or the politicians. We don't trust the institutions themselves. And as Alex Karp noted, once again, that's a big problem.
What is the biggest problem in this society? Biggest problem in this society from my perspective is legitimacy of our institutions. Why aren't they legitimate?
He is absolutely correct. It is a lack of trust in institutions that's really making it difficult for us as a nation to advance. And I have a special guest with me, but he's going to depart here any second as soon as we play this next clip. As a matter of fact, let's just go ahead and play the next clip.
The right response is, we want this to happen, we want to happen, we want to be involved in the dialogue. The real response is, it feels like the people criticizing Elon don't want it to happen. And this is going to destroy those people.
So they do have an easy button, they being the uniparty swamp, or really anyone on Capitol Hill. Any incumbent on Capitol Hill has an easy button to re-election. It's called hopping on the DOGE train. If you're a Republican, you hop on the DOGE train and you say, I'm advancing President Trump's agenda, and you will be reelected. If you're a Democrat, you hop on the DOGE train and you say, I'm embracing bipartisanship for the sake of cutting waste and saving my constituents money and saving them heartache and trying to get rid of government bloat. It's a winning ticket. It's the easy button. Hop on DOGE, help DOGE be successful, get them in, get them out, and then we move forward with a much, much, much more efficient government, and everybody is happier. Except that there's one piece of information that Alex Karp may not be aware of. That piece of information is the fact that what DOGE is uncovering is more than just waste. DOGE is uncovering and will continue to uncover corruption, fraud, abuse. In other words, members of the uniparty swamp, not just on Capitol Hill, but also bureaucrats, and not just in D.C., nationwide, they risk, as a result of DOGE's efforts, they risk getting busted. Busted for their sins, in many cases, busted for their crimes. There are people that if DOGE continues to dig as it's digging and does even more, there are people in D.C. and across the country who will go to jail because they will be exposed. What DOGE is doing, it's cutting waste. That's great. It's making government more efficient. That's great. But the reason there's this unhinged, absolutely unhinged, and unpopular dissent against DOGE is because these people feel that DOGE is an existential threat, not to America, but to their cons, their scams, their money laundering, their influence peddling, everything. The things that they've done in office as a politician or a bureaucrat, they realize that if they were to get busted, that the best case scenario is that they're booted out of politics. That's the best thing that could happen to them. The worst thing that could happen to them is that they could go to jail. This is why they're fighting so hard. It's not because they fear an efficient government. It's not because they're so scared. Oh my gosh, think of all of the transgender Indians that aren't going to be able to have their surgeries because Elon Musk cut funding. That's not what they're scared of. They're scared on behalf of their own hides. They're scared on behalf of the deep state. They're scared on behalf of their version of the United States of America, which is the United States of America under the globalist elite cabal. They've been building this foundation for a long time. DOGE threatens to tear that foundation down. And that's why they're terrified. That's why they are unhinged. That's why they are literally losing sleep over this. They might not like Donald Trump, but they're terrified of Elon Musk. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey suffers from arguably the most important ailment, not necessarily the biggest, but the most important ailment that hampers Democrats today. Now, you're going to watch this 22-second clip, and you're going to think that I'm thinking that it's their adherence to DEI, to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's a big one, but that one is sort of fading in a way. We'll see, maybe. I say it's fading. I think it's actually being rebranded, but that's a discussion for another day. But they do suffer from something similar to it, but it's not just their adherence to DEI. It's actually worse than that. But let's go ahead and play the video in question.
Talk to any CEO, major, Fortune 500 company. They'll tell you that their bottom line, dollar-wise, does better when there's more diversity in the room.
But many of these...
That's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's made us stronger.
Many of these companies, though, are ditching their DEI
programs.
And
I don't know why.
She just doesn't know why. She just doesn't know why. And that is the problem. Okay, let's talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion first and foremost. True diversity based upon merit. In other words, if you were to make all of your selections, whether it's admission into a college or or promotion of an employee or even hiring of an employee, if you base it upon merit and you have a wide enough cross section, a wide enough range, we'll say, you're trying to fill 500 positions, you're going to get true natural diversity, because you will find qualified candidates of every race, creed, whatever. The problem with DEI is that it's forced diversity. It throws merit out the window. It focuses on quotas. It focuses on equity of outcomes instead of equality of opportunity. And the equality of opportunity aspect of it is what we should always strive for. That is what America has been built on, especially over the last few decades, up until, we'll say, since the Obama years. Prior to that, we were so close. I mean, you get into the late 90s, early 2000s, and all of a sudden, our nation was really starting to focus and become grounded in the idea of equality of opportunity. And we were there. And then Barack Obama comes along, advances cultural Marxism. The rest is history, and we're still fighting to get back to the way things were just prior to his installation. But let's get back to Maura Healey and the problem with Democrats. It's not DEI. That's not their biggest problem. Their biggest problem does begin with D, but it's not diversity. It's denialism. They just cannot grasp that the ideas that they have been promoting for so long are false, that the ideas that they've been promoting for so long are wrong. And they're not used to getting caught out by anybody, especially by legacy media. So when they say, I have spoken, you can speak to any CEO of any Fortune 500 company, and they'll all say that diversity is their strength, that the DEI is what helps their bottom line. And then it's like, well, yeah, except that, it seems as if many, if not most of them, are abandoning that. Are they going against their bottom line? Oh, I don't know why. I don't know why. The reason that and I truly believe that. I truly believe she doesn't know why. She doesn't understand that if you are to limit, let's just say, for example, you have a CEO position, and you've determined that instead of going for the best CEO, regardless of any of the intersectionality aspects of it, you're going for the best CEO based upon the most qualified, most talented, and you have your pool is 100% of the population. You can pick anybody. If you take that and you reduce it down to where you're going to make sure that your next CEO is an LGBTQIA plus black female. Now you're down to, instead of 100% of the population where you can pick absolutely the best person, you're down to less than 1% of the population, and you're trying to pick out the best person out of that extraordinarily limited batch. And she doesn't know why. And that's a problem. That is their biggest problem. Their biggest problem isn't adherence to these stupid policies. Their biggest problem for Democrats like Maura Healey, and that doesn't account for all Democrats. Some of them are waking up. But as far as Democrat lawmakers like Maura Healey, that is their biggest problem. It's delusion. If there's one thing that people who are brand new to prepping often forget, it's the long-term storage meds. I think a lot of times people either forget them or they don't realize that they can acquire medications that can be held for an extended period of time. My good friends over at Jace Medical, they've got you covered, whether it's for chronic meds, for illnesses that you or your family members have, whether it's antibiotics, just being ready for whatever is going to happen in the world. These are things that you should have available to you if you're going to be preparing for self-reliance in the long haul. Go to jdrucker.com/meds, jdrucker.com/meds. Use promo code RUCKER10, the number 10, RUCKER10 at checkout, and you get a nice discount on top of that. jdrucker.com/meds. All right, this next segment, which I'm about to play, I actually did over the weekend, and it picked up a lot of steam. We're going to go ahead and replay it for today's episode, because it didn't make it into any of the shows. It was a standalone, which I've been doing a lot more of lately, and this one picked up steam, so we're going to play it here. It's and I did mention it before, so you already know this is about Susan Collins, wrong leftist, Kaitlan Collins from CNN. I believe there's a very good chance that at least she, if not her entire production team, if not all of CNN, was aware and working with Vladimir Zelensky and his team in order to push the security guarantees narrative during the debacle of a press conference that they held on Thursday. I have some evidence of that. It's not even really evidence. Again, I'm not trying to get sued here, but I do, based upon what I'm seeing, I think it looks like they were coordinating. Okay, that's my personal opinion, and you guys go down in the comments, tell me what you think. And I'm not going to don't put in the chat if you, I know a lot of times I say, oh, get in the chat. This time I want to be able to look at it later, and I can't see the old chats. Okay, so if you put in the chat something important, something like, hey, did you see this? Or I noticed this. If I don't see it, then I'm not going to see it. Okay, someday I'll get a full-blown producer who can take care of all that stuff for me, but not yet. Not there yet. So leave your comments in the chat. Let's go ahead and play that segment from this weekend. Did Zelensky and CNN's Kaitlan Collins coordinate to push security guarantees? Now I'm going to play the portion of the video where I think it seems as if it's possible. I'm not going to say it's definitive, but it seems possible. There's little cues that point to the notion that Kaitlan Collins and Zelensky talked beforehand, and that she was going to ask about security guarantees and yada, 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 and she was going to try to push it. And later on, by the way, in the part, I think a lot of people have seen it, there's a portion where she's talking about trying to get her point across that, what if Russia invades, and what if the Russia breaks a ceasefire, and are you going to put troops in? I mean, it seems like she's literally doing the pitch for Zelensky to try to get American troops in Ukraine. And Trump shuts her down. And unfortunately, it's fortunate and unfortunate. It's unfortunate because I don't think people were catching on to what she was trying to do, because they were so focused on the fact that Trump is lambasting her and telling her she needs to be more concerned about CNN's failing ratings than asking these stupid questions. And that's, of course, whatever, and it was funny. It was funny. But with that said, we sort of all missed. Well, I didn't miss it, but everybody else missed what seems to be a coordination between Kaitlan Collins and Vladimir Zelensky. Now, to set the stage, I started noticing this as I'm watching it, right? Based on the first question, she conspicuously brings up security guarantees. And then when I went to rewatch that portion of it, I realized, holy crap, did he just nod at her? Did he just sort of prompt her? Looks like he might have. And then later on, as she's like, she's kind of trying to break in there and say, President Zelensky's shaking his head, and he seems like he's ready. He's got this pre-planned speech, or not speech, but pre-planned response, spontaneous response to talk about why there needs to be security guarantees. To me, it felt like, again, before I even went back to rewatch it, it felt like, wow, she really is. This seems like the two of them are working together. And then when I went back to rewatch it, I started seeing some things, which I'll show you here in a second. And it's like, wow, I think that they really did coordinate. And Zelensky didn't get his point across because, as things would, as everything turned out, he's trying to he's really serious. He's serious, and he's really trying to get it. But then it gets interrupted by some other question. He throws his hands up, and he's like all annoyed that he didn't get to make his pitch in front of the American people as to why there must be security guarantees, and why Vladimir Putin is pure evil, and why Zelensky is just, he's the Messiah, and we should worship him and send him our troops to die on the battlefields of World War III in eastern Ukraine. That was the pitch that he was going to try to make, perhaps not in those exact words. But to be clear, before we play that, I want to, he established right in the very beginning, okay, his opening statement that President Trump graciously allowed him to make, his opening statement, he first mentions, let's remember, this is the opening statement for the signing of an agreement for minerals, okay, for rare earths. He'd already been told, we're not going to talk about security guarantees until this deal is signed, and then we might talk about it. And he wasn't happy with that. So he starts off right off the bat. You got legacy media saying, oh, President Trump, this was a setup. Yeah, it was a setup. It was a setup by Zelensky to make the public pitch to the American people and to American media about trying to get the United States cornered into security guarantees, which is boots on the ground in Ukraine to fight Russians. In other words, to start World War III, which is what Zelensky wants to do. I don't care how much you dislike Zelensky, okay? Chances are you don't hate him enough, because this narcissist, this truly, legitimately evil man is trying everything he can to do two things: to hold on to power and to start World War III. Those are his only two goals. He says he wants to help the Ukrainian people, except he will not do a ceasefire unless there are security guarantees from the United States, unless there's the opportunity to start World War III. Because without the start of World War III, then he doesn't get what he really wants. He isn't interested in protecting the people of Ukraine. If he was, he would accept the ceasefire. And he goes out and says, ceasefire, Russia broke ceasefire 25 times. Russia never once broke a ceasefire with United States interests at play. There is about maybe a 3% chance that if Zelensky signs this deal, if the United States starts mining rare earths in Ukraine, there's about maybe a 2 or 3% chance that a skirmish could result in Americans being hurt, that a ceasefire would be broken by Putin. I don't care what he did, since Obama's color revolution of 2014. That's what Zelensky is like, oh, Russia keeps breaking the ceasefire, because he doesn't mention the conditions surrounding what was happening in Ukraine as a result of Barack Obama and the aforementioned Susan Rice. So, point being is that I believe, based upon the way that it's subtle, there's definitely nothing definitive. I keep having to repeat that. I'm not suggesting this is 100%, okay? But my gut instinct, which is almost never wrong, my gut instinct, and then the a brief analysis of what was happening in the video, tells me that there is a pretty good chance, a very good chance, that Vladimir Zelensky and possibly CNN, but also possibly just Kaitlan Collins, okay? She might have been doing this on her own, or her producers, or whatever. New producer, or I think her old producer left. But that somebody was coordinating with Zelensky and his people for CNN and for Kaitlan Collins to start inserting questions that were favorable to allow Vladimir Zelensky to make the pitch for security guarantees in exchange for the mineral deal. And people are, oh, that doesn't sound so bad. No, the mineral deal is itself hugely beneficial to Zelensky. It's like so basically what they're saying is, we will only allow you to make us a crap ton of money if you also put your troops in harm's way of Russia. We will only allow you to pay us billions of dollars if you're willing to start World War III with us. Otherwise, we don't want the money that you're offering. It's idiotic. But before I get into the actual analysis, I'm going to go ahead and play, just so nobody thinks I'm lying. I'm going to play the first 32 or 33 seconds of Vladimir Zelensky's opening remarks, during which time he never mentions minerals, doesn't mention rare earths, doesn't mention the economy, doesn't mention anything like that. But he does, after 12 seconds, he mentions security guarantees, and then he does it again, after 32 or 33 seconds. Watch.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. President. Thank you for your invitation. And really, I hope that this first document, will be first step to real security guarantees for Ukraine, our people, our children. I really count on it. And of course, we count that America will not stop support. Really, for us, it's very important to support and to continue it. I want to discuss it with details further during our conversation, and of course, the infrastructure or security guarantees.
All right, so let's go through the segment of the video that really caught my attention. It starts off with a question, standard question about supplying weapons, and that sort of piques Zelensky's interest. And I want you to notice what he does. As soon as President Trump mentions Biden, this is when Zelensky sort of kind of wakes up and starts looking around, looks as if he's locking eyes with Kaitlan Collins, makes sort of a weird face, and then it's subtle. And maybe I'm imagining it. You tell me. It looks as if he gives a short nod and then a little bit more of a nod. And then shortly thereafter is when she comes out with the question about security guarantees. So let's watch that.
Are you going to send more arms to Ukraine in case there's no peace?
Yeah, we're going to have arms to Ukraine, yeah, sure. Hopefully I won't have to send very much because hopefully we're going to have it finished. We're looking forward to finishing this quickly. We're not looking forward to sending a lot of arms. We're looking forward to getting the war finished so we can do other things. But we very much appreciate the agreement because we needed what they had, and we're treating, our country is now treated fairly. Biden didn't do that. He didn't know what the hell he was doing. This should have never happened. This should have never started. But, sure, the answer.
This is the part, by the way, where after President Trump, if I was there, there never would have been a war. And it looks as if Zelensky's looking over at Kaitlan Collins from CNN, so kind of doing a weird eye squint thing, and then nods at her. But I want you to listen to what's being said when he's nodding. Is he nodding? And you can barely see it because it's right as it's unfortunately the camera pans towards President Trump and pans away from him just at the last moment. But you'll notice that, is he nodding that President Trump just wants to send a few weapons and not very many weapons? This is a guy that wants weapons. Why would he be nodding in affirmative when President Trump is saying that he doesn't want to send very many weapons, unless he's not nodding because of what President Trump is saying? He's kind of signaling at Kaitlan Collins. Again, watch.
Is yes, but hopefully we won't have to send much because.
See it? Let me rewind that a little bit. Again, listening. It's not what President Trump is saying, that he's sort of nodding at it. One small nod and then one bigger nod. Again, staring directly in the direction of. I can't tell for sure if he's looking directly at Kaitlan Collins, but that's definitely where she is. She's right there. So.
Hopefully we won't have to send much because I'm looking forward to getting it done quickly, very quickly.
Does that mean you'll provide security guarantees, Mr. President?
I don't want to talk about security yet because I want to get the deal done. You fall into the same trap like everybody else. A million times you say it over and over. I want to get the deal done. Security is so easy. That's about 2% of the problem. I'm not worried about security. I'm worried about getting the deal done. The security is the easy part. Security is very nice. Everybody stops shooting. And now will Europe put people there? I know France is going to. I know the UK is going to. I know other countries are going to, and they happen to be right next door. We haven't committed, but we could conceivably. We have security in a different form. We'll have workers there digging, taking the raw earth so that we can create a lot of great product in this country. So in that sense, you have something, but we haven't determined that yet. I will say, in speaking to France and in speaking to, and they were here, as you know, last week and just the other day, they have committed to a lot of security. I don't think you're going to need much security. I think once this deal gets done, it's over. Russia's not going to want to go back, and nobody's going to want.
Notice Zelensky's shaking of his head. That's going to come into play because Kaitlan Collins is going to try to say, well, it looks like Zelensky's shaking his head. No. And she starts to get into the thing, and here's how it'll go down. She'll mention that he's shaking his head, and she'll try to start getting into a question, and Zelensky will take that as his cue to respond to why he's shaking his head, and he'll talk about how he needs to have security guarantee, but he's not able to because President Trump just ignores Kaitlan Collins, moves on to the next person, and Zelensky's still trying to answer. He's like, thank you for the question, and he's still trying to answer Kaitlan Collins' question, and he realizes that Trump has moved on to somebody else, and he like throws like a little it looks like a teenager fit, as if the teenager didn't get what he wants. Watch. Hold on, let me rewind it just a tad bit to the shaking of the head, and then watch how it goes down from there.
A lot of security. I don't think you're going to need much security. I think once this deal gets done, it's over. Russia's not going to want to go back, and nobody's going to want to go back. When this deal ends, I really believe this deal is going to be over. Please go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. President, thank you. You hosted Macron and Keir Starmer at the White House.
Are you going to send more?
I'm not going to replay it. You can always rewind the video. But it is, again, far from definitive. It's definitely possible that I'm just reading into it. Confirmation bias, because again, my first thought was that's awfully weird how her talking points, her questions seem to perfectly align with exactly what Zelensky wants to do and what he wants to say and what he wants to achieve with this meeting. It's as if they coordinated it. Now, I'm not making accusations. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. Here's a true story. I was testing out some coffee. This has been almost a year ago. Testing out some coffee for a potential sponsor. And I had made the coffee, and I went about my morning routine, did my work, doing my thing, and then I took my first sip of coffee. And it struck me. I'm like, holy crap. I had forgotten that I was testing out this new coffee. I just took the first sip, and I was like, wow, this is really good. And then I remembered, oh my gosh, this is Promised Grounds. This is the stuff that they sent me. So I started drinking some more of it, and I have become a lifetime customer of Promised Grounds. They are a Christian coffee company, which I know you don't see a whole lot of them. They give back to the community. They're Texas, all American, all Texan, just like a lot of the stuff that we do. Check them out. Go to jdrucker.com/coffee, jdrucker.com/coffee, and check out Promised Grounds. It's great. All right, I'm going to play another quick clip. It's not that quick, but another clip from the weekend. But this too got a lot of traction. Even as a standalone segment, it got picked up quite a bit. A lot of people were talking about it, and so we're going to play it because you probably didn't see it. If you only watch my show, my live show, or the full show, whether you watch it live or not, then unfortunately, you're not getting everything, but vice versa is true as well. And I'm trying to work on this. When I say vice versa is true, there are certain things that only go in the live show that I never publish as a standalone segment. So you can't just watch the standalone segments and you get the whole picture. Unfortunately, not yet. We're working on a system, okay? And I think that the system is going to end up being that I take all of the segments and I put them into the live show. That way, even if if you're just watching the segments, you'll get all the important stuff. Whether they're 3 minutes or 15 or 20 minutes, you can watch all those, and that'll get you the most important stuff. But like, for example, my discussion earlier in the beginning of the show, if you missed it, I was talking about how conservative influencers are hopping on this Kieran Culkin thing. That's not going to ever be a standalone. Okay, only those of you who are watching or have been watching the full show, you're the only ones that get to hear that part. So I think what we're going to do is, and I welcome input from you, I think what we're going to do is we'll do segments and we'll just play all the segments during the show. Unless it's just too much. Some days I might do 4 or 5 segments. I don't want to make you sit through all 4 or 5 segments, not, during a live show. That's sort of narcissistic of me, right? But yeah, unless, for the most part, if you watch the live show, whether you watch it live or not, you're going to get at least 98% of my content. Okay, that I think I can promise you. We'll eventually someday we'll be able to get all of this together, get it coordinated, and make it to where if you watch one live show, whether it's 1 hour, 2 hours, 3, 4, whatever, that you're going to get everything. Okay, that's the intention, that's the goal, and I think we can get there pretty quickly. It's just a matter of getting. This is one of the reasons I say make sure to go to my sponsors. Hey, make sure to share these videos. It will help us because once we are able to, quote unquote, grow up and get us, full-blown producer, maybe a better studio, whatever, then we will do those things. I don't, I do this to support my family first and foremost, but above and beyond that, I don't need, I don't need a Mercedes or whatever. That's probably not even that big of a deal anymore. I don't need a Rolls Royce or anything like that. I'm very, very happy with my little mid-sized SUV that's 12 years old now. I'm good with that. Okay, change the oil, change the timing belt. We're good. We're good. Probably another 200,000 miles ready to go in there. Point I'm trying to get at is this. Yes, please visit our sponsors. Please share the show. Please do all that good stuff because it does definitely help get us to that next level. In the meantime, we are piecing it together as best we can. Speaking of piecing it together, this next clip is one that it did get a lot of traction over the weekend, so we are going to play it here. And it's still pertaining to Ukraine, but I think more importantly, this is how not just the first replayed segment I did was about how legacy media, in particular CNN, was working with with Ukraine, but on whose orders? Were they doing that alone? Are they just sympathetic? Or were they working on behalf of the globalist elite cabal? Did they get instructions? And I think they did. As did, in my humble opinion, Susan Rice and her cronies. And I do think people ask, where does Susan Rice stand on the hierarchy of the globalist elite cabal? I think she's up there pretty high. I really do. I think she might be above a middle manager, but below somebody like Barack Obama. Okay, she's above, whoever. Someday we'll get into the whole Club of Rome stuff. Get into Klaus Schwab, George Soros, now Alex Soros, all the various minions of the now deceased Henry Kissinger. See where Barack Obama, Anthony Fauci, and all those guys fit in. See where the Bushes fit in, because they do. That'll be a show for another day. In the meantime, let's go ahead and talk about a slightly above mid-level manager, Susan Rice, and her attempts to gaslight America. Deep State spokeswoman Susan Rice projects globalist plan by saying Zelensky was the victim of a setup. Now, she is right. Yesterday's debacle of a press conference ahead of what was supposed to be the signing of a mineral deal between the United States and Ukraine, it was a setup. What Susan Rice gets wrong is who was doing the setting up. This was supposed to be an ambush of sorts, a minor ambush, but still an ambush of sorts against President Trump. They were trying to hit him from allies, from Zelensky himself, from the press. They were trying to push the notion in the last minute, in a very public fashion, push the notion of having the United States include security guarantees in the mineral deal. This was new to everybody, at least on America's side, but it wasn't new to those who were working towards getting this accomplished. Of course, the end goal is to drag the United States into World War III, but I'll discuss that later. Let's first go to this. Let's go to Susan Rice herself. This comes from Red State. Bob Hoge over there says, former Obama advisor Susan Rice shows where her loyalties lie, claims Zelensky meltdown was a setup. And this is something that they do. They do very well. Okay, the Uniparty swamp does it. The globalists do it far better especially when they're caught doing something, they suddenly come out and say, oh, right, yeah, no, totally, it was the other side that was doing this. So in this case, they tried to set up President Trump, and since it didn't work, they're claiming that he set up Zelensky. You know, it wouldn't take long before leftists, neocons, and Trump haters would all weigh in on the epic smackdown at the Oval that took place Friday afternoon where the president and his number 2 VP, JD Vance, weren't buying the insolence that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was throwing down. As reported, failed political hacks, both former because nobody would consider voting for them any longer, such as Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, they quickly weighed in with their unhinged takes. Now, former National Security Advisor and ambassador to the UN and Barack Obama's acolyte, Susan Rice, is jumping on board, and she's got her knickers in a twist. She appeared on MSNBC, of course, she appeared on MSNBC Friday to express her disapproval. Let's pull that up.
Joining our ongoing coverage, former United States Ambassador to the United Nations, former National Security Advisor to President Obama, Ambassador Susan Rice is here. Ambassador, your reaction?
Well, Nicole, obviously it's a very sad day and an embarrassment for the United States on the world stage. But let's step back and analyze what's happened here. I think there's no question that this was a setup. You heard Donald Trump say at the end of that clip you played, this is great television. This was a setup. Volodymyr Zelensky was compelled to agree to a horrible deal that would have sent Ukraine's minerals to the United States without any concrete security guarantees. And yet, because he was trying to improve a relationship with Donald Trump, he came to Washington, he came to the Oval Office and sat down for a meeting, hat in hand. And soon after he got there, the Vice President of the United States lit into him and started a confrontation.
Now, let me just stop you right there, Madam Ambassador. That is absolutely positively inaccurate. It wasn't shortly after he got there. That's the clip that a lot of people saw. I would say the vast majority of Americans who were paying attention, they were only shown the last 10 minutes. They didn't get to see the first 40 minutes because during the first 40 minutes, it was crystal clear from the beginning, from his very first words, his opening statement, that Zelensky was the aggressor, that Zelensky was the one who was already showing signs from the first 7 or 8 words that he spoke during that press conference. He was already expressing his contempt for the deal that had already been agreed upon before he even flew down. It was a warning signs were hitting right off the bat, and JD Vance, shortly after he got there, JD Vance didn't say a single word for the first 40 minutes. So Susan Rice is, as always, falls into the category of she's either really stupid and can't tell time, okay? So she's full-blown stupid, or she's telling one of her standard bald-faced lies. Let's keep going.
Now, I've been in countless Oval Office meetings with heads of state, presidents and vice presidents, as National Security Advisor, as UN Ambassador, and in other roles. I can tell you that the Vice President or the Secretary of State or anybody else, they don't jump in, hijack a conversation without the express blessing of the President of the United States. So JD Vance did that deliberately. Donald Trump knew what he was going to do. And I think, as he said at the end, because he can't, help himself, this was a setup for the cameras. It was a play to his base. But above all, it was a play to Vladimir Putin, to show fealty to Vladimir Putin, and to try to humiliate Zelensky. But Zelensky didn't play along with the script, because Zelensky's got dignity and guts. And Zelensky has people that he democratically represents.
Well, I got to stop Madam Ambassador Susan Rice one more time, hopefully the last time, because that was somehow she was able to squeeze in 3 or 4 additional lies in 30 seconds. Let's start from the beginning. No, this was not a setup for the sake of the cameras. President Trump's comments came as a result of the idiocy that Zelensky portrayed as a result of his insolence, his petulance, his, again, idiocy, stupidity. He was being a jerk about the entire thing. He was, if anything, President Trump spent those first 40 minutes trying to save Zelensky, trying to preserve the potential for peace for his people, despite Zelensky's stupid attacks. I mean, I get it. He doesn't like Vladimir Putin. Great. Awesome. You have established that, and rightly so. I mean, I'm not saying, oh, he should like Vladimir Putin for invading his country. I'm not suggesting that at all. But this is not the time or the place. Okay? This is a press conference ahead of a lunch before you're about to sign an extremely important deal for your people. You don't start off the negotiations publicly by getting insulting. President Trump was trying to help him and spent 40 minutes trying to do just that. But again, Susan Rice likes to play on the ignorance of the people and pretend like, oh my gosh, JD Vance, they're not supposed to say anything, and this is clearly this is done on the express interest of the president, and he'll set up. And no, idiot. I mean, again, I don't think that Susan Rice is stupid. I know she's not stupid. She just hopes that her audience, anybody who listens to her, is stupid enough to, number one, not listen to those first 40 minutes, which they should. And if you haven't, you should. Number two, to listen to her when she says that this was all being pre-planned and set up by the president. JD Vance did what he was supposed to do. He didn't go in there planning to ambush Vladimir Zelensky. He sat there calmly and silently for 40 minutes as Zelensky did the unthinkable. Okay? I mean, I'm surprised it took a person like JD Vance, who is the president's ultimate wingman. I'm surprised that he was able to stay silent for 40 minutes as Zelensky disrespected the Oval Office, contradicted the President of the United States, and insulted the intelligence of the American people. If anything, JD Vance was a little bit late in his attacks, but hey, again, she's right. That's not what VPs or secretaries of state or foreign ministers, that's not what they're supposed to do. When the big guys are talking, you let the big guys talk. Standard operating procedure. But again, I commend JD Vance for hopping in there and trying to slow the roll of the really awkward situation that Zelensky had created. Now, as far as Zelensky being, she makes the comment, Susan Rice makes the comment that the democratically chosen whatever. We're talking about a guy who's literally jailed his opposition, who has literally subverted the elections. He has not allowed an election since the war started. There's supposed to have been an election. He wouldn't allow it. This is not somebody who is the people have spoken. No, the people have not been allowed to speak in Ukraine. And if they had, then Zelensky would no longer be in office. He started off shortly after the invasion. He started off with like a 90% approval rating. Okay, 90% approval rating amongst the Ukrainian people. It has since dropped to about 50%, and it's going to go down even further. He is toast, and he knows it. The only thing that keeps Vladimir Zelensky in office is the fact that he's there at war. If the war ends, his political career, at least in Ukraine, is done. He'll probably go be Secretary General of the United Nations or something stupid like that. But at least the Ukrainian people will vote against Volodymyr Zelensky. I'm actually hesitant to continue playing this clip of Susan Rice, but I will.
And as a result, he couldn't sit there in silence as lies were being told about how the war was started, whose responsibility it was, et cetera, et cetera. And he tried to explain what is in fact the case. To suggest that he was not thankful, I can't count the number of times that Zelensky has thanked the American people, the American government, the President of the United States for the critical support that we've provided. It's not about gratitude. It was an effort to humiliate him, to scuttle the U.S.-Ukraine relationship so that Trump no longer feels any obligation to provide support. and to hand U.S. interests and Ukraine and potentially Europe to Putin on a silver platter.
Oh, Madam Ambassador, you really do rely on the ignorance of your audience to push your narrative. Let's be crystal clear about something, because that last batch of lies was the biggest one so far. To suggest that President Trump wants anything other than peace is a betrayal to our eyes, a betrayal to his history. He has pushed for peace while people like Susan Rice have been warmongering on behalf of the United States for decades. She's the one that wants the war to continue. She's the one that wants the United States drawn into a war. She's the one, she and her cronies are the ones that want World War III. But let's address specifically what she said, this notion that President Trump somehow blew up these negotiations because he wants to pander to Vladimir Putin. No, not at all. As a matter of fact, Vladimir Putin is all in favor. Hey, the U.S. wants to go in there and get the minerals. That's great. That'll help his cause. Vladimir Putin, he won't say this publicly, by the way, but Vladimir Putin would want the United States not militarily involved in Ukraine, but would want the United States to sort of basically be a point of leverage for Ukraine to be able to come to their senses and say, all right, let's rebuild. Here's a whole lot of money that we're going to make off these rare earths. More money, by the way, than they would make if they went to, say, private industry and said, hey, come on in and get these rare earths and cut us in for some. They would get like 10% if that were the case, and President Trump is offering them a very, very lucrative and gracious 50%. That's unheard of, but hey, that's President Trump's trying to do the right thing here. Vladimir Zelensky is not. Putin would love for that to happen because he would love for the United States to come in there and do that, because that would give him leverage to be able to successfully and peacefully end this war. But with that said, let's cut to the actual lies by Susan Rice. She stated that President Trump was trying to blow this up. President Trump, this should not have come to this. This deal was on the table for Zelensky to sign before he ever got to D.C. This deal was on the table and summarily rejected by Zelensky, not once, but twice. First, in Kiev itself, when Scott Bessent went there, he got yelled at. He got into a shouting match, apparently, with Zelensky over the deal because Zelensky did not want to sign it. A week later, in Munich, JD Vance and Marco Rubio met with Zelensky. They said, hey, here's the deal, sign it. And once again, he chose not to. He decided that he did not want to do the deal, again, because of the security guarantees. So then this week, they spent, the negotiators were working. They finally came to a conclusion. It's like, all right, we got this done. Scott Bessent was going on cable news and Fox News and saying, yeah, it's a done deal. It's going to happen. They're coming in. Zelensky's flying in to sign the deal. It was Zelensky who was participating in the setup. It was Zelensky who blindsided the Trump administration after giving every signal, every indication that he was coming here to sign the deal. Okay, President Trump's like, okay, cool. Come in, we'll do a little press conference. We'll go have some lunch, and then we'll go back in the back room and sign the deal. Awesome. That's how deals are done. Zelensky decided that he wanted to blow it up ahead of time. He decided, or it was probably decided for him by people like Susan Rice, by the way. It was decided that he would not go there to honor the deal, to sign the deal as is, not without trying to publicly pressure and humiliate President Trump into accepting security guarantees, into accepting that the United States was going to get involved directly with American troops on the ground in Ukraine. Zelensky was instructed by people like Susan Rice, by members of the globalist elite cabal, to get the United States ready to participate in World War III. So Susan Rice is correct. This was a setup. where she gets it wrong or where she's lying to everybody, is that the setup was on their side, not by President Trump. They want World War III. They crave World War III. They are so desperate to use Ukraine to engage in the final battles. They want the United States of America to be destroyed, and they believe, or they try to, use Volodymyr Zelensky as the bait, as the puppet, to achieve their ultimate goals. Praise God for JD Vance and President Trump for seeing through the ruse and for not engaging in their idiocy. Is the bird flu just the latest example of the powers that be attacking our food supply? I would argue that yes, it almost certainly is. Now, I'm not a doctor, not a scientist. I'm not sitting there in a laboratory looking into bird flu and trying to figure out if it was man-made or if it's, really spreading to whoever, or if it's in this milk or that chicken or those eggs or whatever. I'm not doing any of that. All I'm doing is looking at the writing on the wall. And the writing on the wall for the last few years has said, hey, they're attacking our food supply. It was Klaus Schwab. No. Sorry, it was the other guy, Henry Kissinger. There we go. His predecessor, his mentor. It was Henry Kissinger who said, who controls the food supply can control the people. And it seems as if that's exactly what they are trying to do. I'm a huge fan of, number one, freeze drying your own food, okay? If you have the time and the money, go get you a freeze dryer. You can go to jdrucker.com/harvest, jdrucker.com/harvest to get you a very high quality freeze dryer, the freeze dryer that we use in my companies. Or if you don't want to spend that kind of money, because they're pretty expensive, or you don't have the time or the energy or whatever, you don't want to do it yourself, it's time to stock up on long-term storage food. You can find 4, count them, 4 awesome options, ways that you can start to accumulate, or continue if you already started, to accumulate high-quality, long-term storage food, oftentimes food that will last 25 years. Start getting it built up as best you can, because there may come a time in the not-too-distant future when acquiring food will not be as easy as it is today here in the United States of America. We're already seeing inflation. That's already hitting us. What happens if they inflate it all the way? What if they really try to make us eat lab-grown meat, quote-unquote meat abominations, or whatever, lab-grown something, GMO this, GMO that, or heck, bugs, crickets, cricket burgers. Get in line for your mealworm bread, the mealworm bread lines. Gosh, so many possible ways that they can come after us, attacking food production plants, again, bird flu, whatever. And I don't think, people, well, no, the Trump administration won't do that. I don't think this is the Trump administration, to be clear. If anything, I would say that the most likely candidate, of course, is the globalist elite cabal. Second most likely candidate would be communist China. There's a reason why they're buying up as much farmland as possible. And for whatever reason, we've allowed that. But hey, I'm focused on the future. Go to jdrucker.com/food, jdrucker.com/food, and stock up on as much long-term storage food as you can. Leaving NATO would actually be an economic boom for the United States of America. It's a topic that really nobody's discussing. Sure, we talk about the fact that NATO is a waste of money, that we spend so much money giving to NATO. We cover the lion's share as a nation. We cover the expenses for an organization, an alliance that really doesn't do much for us, if anything at all. I would say probably nothing. But hey, that's me. But no, it's far bigger than that. Leaving NATO would actually benefit our economy in many ways. It would actually drive more money into our nation as a result of us leaving NATO. And I'll explain why here in a second. But let's cover a couple of there's a few 800-pound gorillas roaming around the room right now that we should probably cover. Number one, should NATO even exist? I would argue no. I would say that NATO's usefulness has long been gone, just as the Soviet Union has been gone for a very long time. That was the whole notion. The idea of forming NATO was to stop the expansion of the Soviet Union. Well, the Soviet Union is gone, and even the remnant of the Soviet Union, Russia, is not in expansionist mindset. People say, but look, they invaded Ukraine. That's why we need NATO. And I would argue that if NATO didn't exist, that Russia wouldn't have invaded Ukraine in the first place. Now, obviously, we can't say that definitively because we can't go back in time and make NATO disappear and see if Russia invades anyway. But one of the reasons, for sure, this is indisputable, one of the reasons that Russia did invade Ukraine in the first place was because Ukraine was trying aggressively to join NATO, despite promises way back in 1994, was it? When it was declared, oh, we will not expand NATO eastward, and then boom, we started expanding NATO eastward. Ukraine would be the crown jewel of NATO, of course, and Russia is very concerned about that. Imagine if there were Russian nukes in, for example, Cuba. Do you think that if Russia tried to put nukes in Cuba, that we might respond, I don't know, negatively towards that? I think that we would. And so the idea of expanding NATO to include Ukraine, that was something that Russia definitely did not want. Then there are recent actions. Of course, we had what happened with Volodymyr Zelensky, which prompted some pretty silly things. This article comes to us from Breitbart. Elizabeth Wiebel over there. Mike Lee calls for exit from NATO after Norwegian fuel company stops refueling U.S. military ships. Those dastardly bad guys. Europe doesn't love us, Senator Mike Lee wrote on a post on X. Let's leave NATO. Pretty simple. Lee's post came in response to another post that noted that the company, Haltbach Bunkers, had stopped refueling the U.S. Navy ships and was reportedly urging other European countries to follow suit. In a statement issued by Haltbach Bunkers, the company explained that it would no longer supply American military ships in Norway or those docking in Norwegian ports, adding that the U.S. was excluded based on their behavior towards Ukraine, according to the Daily Mail. Now, nothing is mentioned, of course, in there that Volodymyr Zelensky came to the Oval Office. He disrespected the Oval Office. He insulted the president and the vice president. He insulted the intelligence of the American people with his incessant push for security guarantees. He was supposed to be coming there to sign an economic agreement regarding rare earth minerals. But no, he wanted to make it about a security guarantee. He wanted American troops in Ukraine. He wanted human shields. And if the result of that would have been World War III, that's fine, as long as he and his oligarchs continue to get more money and more power and retain and no elections and all that stuff. This was never about a mineral agreement, at least as far as Zelensky was concerned. But sure, Norway can blame us for the debacle that Volodymyr Zelensky initiated upon us. Now, he's not the only one, by the way. Okay? He being Mike Lee. Sorry, not Zelensky. Mike Lee is not the only one that's calling for this. There was Gunter Eagleman. I've got to figure out who Gunter Eagleman is because his X account is very, very impressive, very enticing, and yet I don't know who this guy is. I should probably look him up. Let's see. What says David J. Freeman, political commentator, America First MAGA, Trump supporter, unfiltered, 1.3 million followers. All right, David J. Freeman. Now I know who he is. Great. He says it's time to leave NATO and the UN. And he's not the only one because Elon Musk reposted his post saying, I agree. So there seems to be this growing sentiment to leave NATO. So we've already talked about how leaving NATO would cut off a resource drain. It's not just the money that we send to support NATO. It's also the equipment, the people, the participation in NATO by our military that is costing taxpayer dollars. But what if, let's say we were to leave NATO. what would happen? There's one thing that's already being discussed right now that would be accelerated if we were to leave NATO, and that is a European army. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, we don't want Europe to have an army. I don't know why. If Europe wants to be a union, which they clearly do, if they don't want to have individual sovereign nations, which they clearly don't, and if those sovereign nations no longer want to be, sovereign, well, so be it. Then they should have an army for the European Union. I have no problem with that. And here's the thing. If that were the case, if we were to leave NATO and they were to form a European Union army, well, guess where they would probably want to buy weapons from? You guessed it, folks. At least a good chunk of it would come from the United States of America. Now, might be like, oh my gosh, are you supporting the military-industrial complex? By no means. Look, the military-industrial complex is going to create weapons and build all sorts of guns and ships and jets and everything, okay? That's going to happen no matter what. We might as well make money off it and sell it to people that are friendly to us. You might say, but Europe won't be friendly to us anymore if we were to leave NATO. I would disagree about that as well. Okay? I mean, here's the thing. We can say all we want about whether Europe likes us or not. They don't like us. They never have. But they do need us. And they always will. Well, maybe not always, but at least for the foreseeable future, there's going to be a need for the United States of America to support NATO. Now, instead of us support Europe. Now, instead of us supporting Europe through NATO, what if we supported them through transactional arrangements regarding our military prowess? Why don't we just sell them weapons that they need? It would be an economic boom, more jobs, more this, more money flowing in, all of that good stuff. Then there is reason number two, or I guess you could say economic boom number two that would come from this. There is, right now, we pay NATO to defend other nations. That's essentially what it's for. We pay, for whatever reason, for them to allow us to defend them. It's like the stupidest thing ever. It's a con, really, against the American taxpayer. But what if instead of us paying them, what if, crazy thought here, but what if other nations were to pay us? Now, I know I don't want to get into being the police of the of the world. We're trying to pull away from that. We're trying to get to an America first stance, right? Okay, great. But what if, because here's the thing, if, for example, if our friends in England were invaded by Russia, NATO or no NATO, let's say we're out of NATO, Russia invades England, okay? Are we going to be like, now Russia, we're going to send you a harshly worded letter? No, we would go and we would defend them. A lot of people would be against it, of course, because a lot of people are against us defending anybody. And I agree to some extent. We do have true friends. And despite the radical leftism that has engulfed the British government, despite the radical Islam that is invading England right now, especially London, despite all these things, we're still friends and allies with England. And yes, we would, treaty or no treaty, we would defend them. So why not? If we're going to be defending, in theory, all of these nations, why wouldn't we want them to pay us for that defense? I know it sounds crazy, okay? People don't talk about it very much, but if we're going to get into some sort of arrangement, some sort of agreement with whichever country we choose, it's not like anybody can pay and we're in. It's not a pay-to-play scenario here. But what if the ones that do want us to help, ones that we want to help, okay, what if they're paying us? And they could be paying us. It's not just like, oh, here's billions of dollars in protection money. It's not quite like that. It would be more along the lines of paying us in the form of, for example, favorable trade agreements, or flat out paying us money, or sending us gold to refill Fort Knox, or whatever. I mean, something. Let's just get something out of it. We have the best military in the world. Now, I know we suffered through 4 years of transgender, militarist, wokeness, whatever, but we got Pete Hegseth in there now. The military is going to be strengthened, bolstered, reinforced. So, hey, somebody wants us to protect them, so be it. They just need to pay us. That's all. And then, last but not least, as far as the economic boom of leaving NATO, is the idea that without NATO, we can be more engaged with other nations. And I know this is going to sound crazy, but that does include Russia. People want to say Russia's the bad guy. I don't disagree. I'm one of those, more and more people seem to love Vladimir Putin. I don't love Vladimir Putin, okay? Do I like him better than Vladimir Zelensky? Yeah, I do, obviously. But but I don't trust him. He has always been Russia first, long before we had anybody who was America first, okay? He will screw over anybody, any nation, anybody to help Russia. And that does include us. He would hurt Americans if it meant that he would be helping Russia. That's in his nature. And I don't like it, because that obviously makes him potentially adversarial to us in certain situations, but I don't disagree with it wholeheartedly. I mean, I think the nations should be sovereign, and they should put their own nations above everybody else. And if every nation did that, then I think we'd have fewer problems in the world, but that's a whole other discussion for a whole other day. After the debacle of a meeting with Vladimir Zelensky, Vladimir Putin went out there and basically said, look, we got a ton of rare earth minerals ourselves. Why don't we work on it? We'll even let, companies come in here, American companies can come in and invest and start getting it themselves. It doesn't even just have to be an agreement with Trump. It could just, we could work with Exxon or somebody. I don't know who he'd work with. But there are potentials for dramatic and very lucrative economic deals that could be made if we were not part of an adversarial alliance such as NATO. Look, I think that NATO was absolutely positively necessary for many decades, for probably 5 decades, okay? 5 decades, NATO was beneficial. One could argue that NATO is the reason that we were able to win the Cold War. NATO is the reason part of the reason that the Soviet Union no longer exists. I'm not saying that NATO has always been bad, but it has outlived its usefulness, and it has become more of a detriment than a positive for the United States of America. So I wholeheartedly agree with a lot of the growing chorus of people who are saying we should leave. And I also want to throw out there the premise of this entire segment. I stand by it. If we were to leave NATO altogether, then the economic benefits for the United States of America would be huge. All right, thank you for watching. I know I forgot to say during the full-blown episode, but please subscribe. Please give me those thumbs up. Please give me money. Okay, you don't have to give me money, but at least give me the subscribe. Hit the subscribe button or the follow button if you're on X or whatever, as well as the thumbs up, the like, the repost, whatever it is. Help me to get this show out there, because we're very proud of our show, okay? I'll admit, I've got an ego, because I do watch other people's shows, and I think my show's better. Not better than everybody's. I mean, I'm sure, there's maybe there might be other better shows out there, maybe, but but I feel like I get it right more than other people in conservative media, more than other people even in alternative media. Not to say I am the best, but I do feel like maybe I should try my best to reach a broader audience for the sake of whatever. I know that's egotistical for me to say, but that's how I feel. If I didn't feel that way, why would I be doing the show in the first place, right? So be sure to subscribe wherever you are. Subscribe on multiple places. I've got one guy who says, yeah, I subscribe to you on YouTube and on Rumble, just in case, because there have been times when Rumble has gone down. And so I had to go to YouTube to watch you there. And so yeah, that makes sense. Okay, great. Awesome stuff. Please go to jdrucker.com/find to find everywhere you can find me, where all the various places, plus my websites, plus my socials, all that good stuff. Go to jdrucker.com/talk if you want to leave me a message. Let me know how you feel, what you're thinking. Where's your head at? Where should my head be at? All good stuff. And that doesn't get filtered. It comes directly to me. jdrucker.com/talk. Lord willing, I will be back very soon with another episode, 9 p.m. tonight, Pacific time, midnight Eastern. Is the next scheduled show, so Lord willing, I'll be there. But in the meantime, you all stay strong, stay safe, and God bless.